And Jagmeet Singh joins us right now. Mr. Singh, thank you for being with us tonight.
My pleasure.
Now, you began this day with criticism for the government, a government that you say the NDP has had to force into action. But, you know, it's also a government that your party is propping up. Is there still, and I appreciate this is not the first time you're being asked this question, but is there still not a philosophical disconnect to keep a government in power that you also criticize for not caring enough?
Well, our criticism is what's getting results. Because we are forcing this government to act, people are getting the respect that they need. And one concrete example is the GST rebate. We had called for this as early as the spring. The Liberal government didn't act. After months and months of pressure, now we're seeing that legislation in the House, tabled today. So that is example, a proof that we have forced this government to get people help.
Okay, and that's your argument. I get that. I wonder, though, given that the NDP's supply and confidence agreement with the Trudeau Liberals is meant to last until 2025, do you see that happening? What other markers do you need to see in this year, for example, in order to keep that agreement alive?
Well, what we forced this government to do is all written out, so we've got clear markers that need to be hit. This year, it was to make sure we got dental care off the ground for kids under 12 and to help to give some respect to families that are having some tough times with their rent. Those two things are now in legislation before the House, and so those will be met. The next phase is going to be a federal delivered program for dental care so that seniors, people living with disabilities, and kids 18 and under can look after their teeth. So that's going to be another marker. And we're going to keep on pushing to make sure that people get respect, whether it's dental care or some relief from inflation or putting more money back in their pockets.
Well, that's interesting because, as you know, New Democrats often criticize Liberals for eating their lunch, getting the credit at the polls. Are you worried that by giving out these markers, you're essentially giving policy for the government on which they can campaign on come the next election?
We can show, for example, for dental care, the Liberals voted against this just a year ago. Last session, they voted against dental care with the Conservatives, and now the Conservatives are continuing to be opposed to people getting their teeth looked after, even though their leader has had dental care for free, paid by the public since his 20s. He's against people getting that. And the Liberals were opposed to it until we forced them to do it. So we can show really clearly that this isn't a matter of something that they were going to get around to. This is something the Liberals had said they were not going to do, they're opposed to, they voted against, and now we forced them to do it.
Okay, let's pick up on Pierre Poilievre, though, because you mentioned the new Conservative leader, and we have seen since the leadership unveiled, certainly, Poilievre trying to appeal to working-class voters, tying you to the governing Liberals, and talking about the high price of everything these days. And to that, Mr. Singh, take a listen to what we heard from Pierre Poilievre earlier in the past month.
Most are lucky to be just getting by. Many are falling behind. And there are people in this country who are just hanging on by a thread. They need a prime minister who hears them and offers them hope that they can again afford to buy a home, a car, pay their bills, afford food, have a secure retirement, and God forbid, even achieve their dreams if they work hard. They need a prime minister who will restore that hope, and I will be that prime minister.
So we, on the one hand, have Liberals putting forth policies that you say your party has forced them to do. On the other, we are now hearing a Conservative leader talking about hope to the Canadian working class. Are you getting squeezed out here?
Not at all. Let's look at what's going on. First of all, the Liberals are only delivering because we forced them. And then we've got Pierre Poilievre, who talks about, the fact that people are struggling, but then when it comes down to is opposed to putting more money in people's pockets because big banks are opposed to it, and he's taken the side of big banks saying that it's wrong to put more money in people's pockets. That's what the GST rebate is. It's people's own money. They paid more GST because the cost of everything has gone up, and now we're saying let's put more of that money back into people's pockets. That's their own money. He's opposed to that. He's opposed to putting money back into people's pockets. Well, how are people going to be able to afford their groceries or pay their bills if we don't actually do anything about it?
He's talking about things like, for example, not bringing about an increase in the carbon tax come the new year, which would affect the pocketbooks of everyday Canadians.
We're talking about putting money back in people's pockets now. Money that is their own money. He's opposed to that. He's on the side of big banks. He's voted against raising minimum wage, which hurts workers. He's voted against making CEOs pay what they owe. So he's shown again and again that really when it comes down to it, he might like to talk a lot, but he doesn't want to do anything to make people's lives better, because we've got in front of us 3 things that were going to make people's lives better that he's opposed to. He's against dental care, even though he's had free dental care paid by the public since his early 20s. He's against putting money back in people's pockets because big banks are opposed to it. And he's against giving some respect to renters that need a little extra support and respect. So he's against actually getting people what he claims to want people to have. And that's a dilemma that he's going to have to answer.
I've got 30 seconds here, but I do want to squeeze in this question to you, Mr. Singh, because as you know, just by reading the coverage already, political observers say that this Commons, this House, is going to be very raucous now. Do you think that's a fair assessment? How will you handle that?
I think the reason why people are making that assessment, rightly so, is because we've seen in the past Conservatives like to attack just for the sake of attack. They don't actually have an outcome or goal in mind because they're not actually pushing for any policy changes. And Conservatives are similar to Liberals in that the Liberals also want to attack the Conservatives just for the sake of the attack. We're focused on getting people what respect that they need, responding to their needs. And that's what sets us apart. And we're hoping we can encourage the other parties to focus their attention on what people need instead of just scoring points on each other.
Jagmeet Singh, thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.